One of my favorite parts of gaming as a hobby is that there's always something going on. Like constantly, there are new irons in the fire at development studios across the world. And it's especially exciting for me when I hear that there's a new game in development from a company who's made a game that I really liked in the past. And that is exactly the case with today's topic. Zenmax Online Studios, the team behind The Elder Scrolls Online, has quietly spent the past 5 years developing a new MMO based on a new IP, and we could potentially be getting an official reveal sometime soon. Whether or not a reveal happens, I'm just excited to know that they've been working on something new for a long while. So let's take a look at the timeline and what we know about the game so far. Rumors of this project started circulating back in October 2018 with a ZeniMax careers posting seeking a programmer with MMO development experience to work on an exciting new IP for PC and consoles. Not much else was said of the position beyond that it would be located in Hunt Valley, Maryland, which is the headquarters location for ZeniMax, although they've got many smaller offices across the country and as of recently have really started to go to, I think, somewhere around 50% remote work. But regardless, this was the first information, the first inkling that ZeniMax had something in the works. Then in 2019, we got more of an official confirmation from ZeniMax game director Matt Fyrour in an interview with Official Xbox Magazine, where he said, "Not a lot of people have picked up on this, but if you look at our job site, you'll see that we are accepting applications for people to work on a new engine for a new AAA game." And that mention of a new engine is kind of a huge deal, as it implies, and we later get further confirmation, that their new MMO will run on a new in-house engine, not Unreal Engine, nor the engine that was used for The Elder Scrolls Online, which frankly is a bit of a relief for me. As much as I do love and appreciate ESO, I want whatever their next project is to look and play differently and or better, and presumably a new engine will at least make that much more likely. Then in 2020, things really began ramping up for news about this game, and we started to get a lot more details. But you know, I'm feeling a little hungry, which means it's the perfect time for a word from today's sponsor. Factor is a food service that delivers ready-to-eat meals straight to your door. All you have to do is toss it in the microwave or oven, warming it up, and you are good to eat. These meals are delivered fresh, were never frozen, and are all dietitian approved. There's a wide variety of meal types and offerings to fit whatever your preference may be. If you're looking for keto, vegan, calorie smart, or if you're just like me and you want something that's balanced and healthy that still tastes good, which is exactly what I went with. There are currently over 34 different chef-prepared meal options to choose from. On top of that, there's an assortment of add-ons, including breakfast items and smoothies. Earlier today, I had the potato leek mash and grilled chicken. It was super simple. Opened the container, tossed it in the oven, and then after 7 minutes, it was ready to eat. I also had some of the strawberry smoothie, and everything tasted great. Also, I will add that I live in a somewhat remote area. I am about an hour away from any major US city, and my stuff still arrived fresh and cold, which is pretty darn important. If you want to try Factor for yourself, head on over to factor75.com or click on my link in the description below, and using my code will get you 50% off your first Factor box. Now that I'm full, let's move forward with news from 2021. And like I said, there were quite a few substantial updates. Now in April, we learned that Colin Campbell had joined ZeniMax Online and would be taking the role of lead level designer for the new MMO. Campbell previously worked on several well-known games. He was the lead world designer for Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, the lead level designer for Mass Effect Andromeda, and he also apparently worked on the narrative teams for both Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Jedi Fallen Order. Now I know Andromeda has a bad reputation, but I will say Fallen Order was hands down one of my all-time favorite Star Wars games, and while Battlefront 2 did have a bad launch, it too looks to have turned the ship around into what a lot of people consider a good game. And then there's Kingdoms of Amalur, which I just love from the get-go. Really fun action combat RPG, interesting world. I loved Kingdoms of Amalur and anyone associated with the project, and I am still hoping they make that Amalur MMO at some point, although that's a whole nother story and probably not going to happen. Anyways, along with the announcement of their new hire, ZeniMax Online's creative director Ben Jones said, "I'm beyond thrilled to welcome Colin Campbell to our new AAA team at ZeniMax. He brings a wealth of experience into the lead level designer position that I know will make a major impact on the original IP." Now, it is worth noting that since joining the team, he has just recently been promoted to the content director for the game, but he spent at least a few years working as the lead level designer, and because he worked on level design for Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning and for Mass Effect Andromeda, for any issues you might have with those games, I don't know, I thought the level designs were good, so maybe that is a good omen. We'll have to see. Now, also around that same time in early 2020, we saw numerous ZeniMax job postings stating that the studio was in search of developers to work on the new game who had extensive experience developing and playing MMORPGs, with the available positions involving work on various systems, which included achievements, itemization, crafting, and housing, or in other words, a lot of these standard expected MMO features. Fast forward to October 2020, we saw a slew of new positions crop up, giving us some more details on what to expect. There were a ton of designer positions for levels, cinematics, encounters, UI, and UX, and many of those requested that applicants have experience working with MMOs as well as open world games and both third and first person perspectives, implying that this MMO would be open world. Not terribly a surprise. ESO is mostly open world, like there are loading screens, but there are large open zones if nothing else. And the first and third person perspective is also something that we get in ESO. That game has both a full dedicated first person mode where you can see animations cast and your character's hands holding weapons and casting spells, as well as of course third person, which I think people predominantly play in. But also in October, we got further confirmation that the game will be running on an entirely new engine. So Xbox News said Xbox first party studio Zenmax Online, developer of ESO, is working on a brand new AAA IP built on a brand new game engine, and the title has been in development since at least 2018. Now, to that statement, Alex Tardiff, who is the lead graphics engineer at ZOS, replied, "Not much to say about this yet, but it's been so much fun creating a brand new engine with how rare this kind of thing is nowadays. I feel fortunate to be at this studio while we invest heavily in our own technology. And when done right, it certainly can be a major benefit. It can be a major help to a game. And one of the things that some game engines struggle with when MMOs are developed on them is they're not designed for MMOs. And that can be a problem, especially as games continue to expand with time." Then the following year, ZeniMax Online finally came out with what I would consider the first real formal public-facing acknowledgement of the game, because prior to that, everything had just been like various developers either tweeting or talking online or doing interviews, but this was from like an official channel. On August 20th, 2021, the official ZeniMax Online Twitter account posted that their next AAA game was in development and they're looking for passionate people to join the team. That tweet then also linked to their hiring page, and that page had a header that said, "No, it's not a rumor. Our next AAA game is in development." And below that, they stated that they've learned a lot bringing the world of ESO to life, and it's time for them to take those lessons and build a new AAA IP. Say that their vision for their next game is grand in every sense of the word, and that they're developing a new engine, of course, as we've reiterated numerous times. Might be a bit reaching here, but I do take that to mean probably a very large scale MMO, maybe large scale in terms of the playable space. It's, you know, jumping out on grasping at straws here a little bit. Okay, let's move on to 2022, which actually did bring us quite a few new details on the state of the game, thanks to creative director Ben Jones. He appeared on the Product Builders podcast, revealing a few things. First, confirming the length that the game had been in development. He said, "We're primarily known for ESO, which is an extension of the very well-established Elder Scrolls universe and also published here at Bethesda, but I am driving an independent team working on new intellectual property, and I've been doing that for about 4.5 years. He also talked about the size of the development team, which seems fairly decent. He said that he's responsible for a design team of about 50 people, but they've got a development team of nearly 200 people at this point that are spread all over the globe. 200 people is a decent chunk designing an MMO. It also leads me to believe that as of that interview, that they are actually in full-scale production, no longer in pre-production. We just don't know how far along in that process is, when that tipped over. It's of course hard to say for sure. It's all completely guesswork. He stated that the game is a considerable investment and a very large scope project. Big scale MMO, large play space, lots of stuff going, who knows? And he touched on the fact and some of the implications of them making a new IP, saying that we're creating a new IP. So a lot of that started with a background for a world, a vision for a high level world that we were going to create, and to a degree, a story that we wanted to tell. So this just further drives home the idea that it is a fresh, brand new IP. PvP, which is going to be important to keep in mind when we get to another point of discussion later in this video. And this finally brings us to the current year 2023. Anything new? Well, not much in terms of like new leaks or developer interviews, but we do have those old reliable job postings to comb through for details. So first there's the lead gameplay producer, who was said to need experience and familiarity producing and working with progression, combat, encounter, AI, and moment teams, and to have solid familiarity with production in a live service MMO game. None of these things sound especially surprising. Yes, an MMO is going to have a progression system. Of course, it's going to have combat, encounters, and AI. Moving on to the lead content producer, who was said to need experience with level design, narrative, cinematics, encounters, world building, and mission and quest teams. They were also asked to have familiarity with production in live service MMOs. The lead technical designer was asked for experience in developing open world games and familiarity with third-person action or role-playing games. Same thing with the designer director, was asked for familiarity with third-person and action RPGs, as well as experience with multiplayer open world live service MMOs. There was a position for a senior vehicle specialist, so it looks like the game will have vehicles of some sort in it. They would be designing and developing these. And there was also, we have seen a position that was fulfilled for a principal PvP designer, so it looks like this game will have PvP. Again, not terribly surprising. Also, of course, not surprising, monetization, it's going to be there. For the position of senior product manager, they would be partnering with design and UX to define and steer systems, economies, and rewards that compose the game's monetization and retention loops. They were asked for experience with launching and building live ops environments, live service games across all platforms. One of the main faults, maybe you could say, of ESO is the particular way it is monetized, or more so broken down and hyper monetized with all these different layers of chapters that they release and the various DLCs. Non-mandatory subscription, but sort of mandatory if you plan on playing on a regular basis. And then the fact that it has, you have to purchase all this stuff as it comes out every year. They release a new update. Some of it's free, some of it has to be purchased. Let's not talk about the endless crafting bag, which if you're going to really play it all, you probably want to buy the monthly sub for. But regardless, yes, of course, the game is going to have monetization. Now, there is one interesting twist to this entire story that I've yet to mention. I wanted to save it for last because it's kind of, well, there's the possibility of this being a Star Wars game. One running theory is that Zenmax is working on a Mandalorian-themed MMO. Now, this information is only sourced from leakers. Multiple leaks that have happened over the past couple of years, with leakers then confirming fellow leakers, saying that, yes, those prior leaks were correct, so are mine, just trust us, bro. Nothing confirmed through, like, official sources, which a lot of what we've talked about so far is official. We've seen official developers, we've seen official job posting, we've seen ZeniMax's own Twitter. Most of what we've covered so far is all official stuff. The Mandalorian stuff it's on shaky ground, but it's absolutely possible. Although a Mandalorian MMO does seem to be in direct conflict with all of the job postings that clearly state this is a new IP, unless what those meant were either I guess Mandalorian is a new IP within the Star Wars IP. Is that accurate? Do you consider Mandalorian an IP within the Star Wars IP? Is that how that works? Or that it's a new IP for ZeniMax because the only IP they'd worked with prior to that is the Elder Scrolls. Who's to say? And then this leads to further speculation that ZeniMax may have 2 new games in active development. This Mandalorian thing that's rumored from leakers, and a new IP MMO, which is what we've mostly been talking about so far, which actually turns out isn't speculation. The studio having multiple games in development, it's no secret. They state as much themselves on official channels. The header on their Twitter page right now says that they have multiple unannounced projects. The Mandalorian side of this is like less accurate, less concrete than everything else on the timeline that we've discussed, as its only sources are leaks and rumors, but it is possible that ZeniMax could in fact be working on 2 MMOs, one for the new IP and one for the Mandalorian. One thing that people do point to sort of as supporting evidence of the Mandalorian MMO thing is that hiring of Colin Campbell, whom, as we mentioned, has credits for working on 2 Star Wars games, Jedi Fallen Order and Battlefront 2. But of course, that doesn't confirm anything, but I guess it probably wouldn't hurt if you were making a new Star Wars game to have someone in a leading position who previously also worked on a Star Wars game, worked in that universe, worked with that IP, worked with the rights holders. It definitely wouldn't hurt, but just because they have someone who's worked on Star Wars in the past doesn't confirm that they're making a Mandalorian MMO. I also want to mention too, in 2021, there was this random GeForce Now leak which revealed that Zenmax Online had a game in development that was code-named Project Kestrel. So there's a good chance that either this new IP MMO or this Mandalorian MMO thing is codenamed Project Kestrel. And I think what's more interesting about that GeForce Now leak is that it referenced the launch window for Project Kestrel as being at some point in 2024, so next year. At this point in time, April 2023, the game has been in development for around 5 years. Now, many MMOs have a ballpark development time of between 5 and 7 years as like a rough average. ZeniMax's current game, The Elder Scrolls Online, had about 7 years of development before it finally released. So using that as a template, I do think that there's a decent chance we at least get some sort of a reveal either this year or next. Now, there's a few possible events coming this year that this could happen. We of course have Summer Game Fest, which is happening on June the 8th. There is the Xbox Game Showcase scheduled for June 11th. There is of course E3. Too soon. And then, of course, we've got things like the Game Awards happening later in this year and various other possible points that they could be announcing this. But either way, whatever ZeniMax Online Studios has cooked up, I am excited to learn more. I think they got a lot right with ESO. If nothing else, that game gave me a ton of memorable MMO experiences. The beta was a lot of fun. The launch was a lot of fun. I even played the game again from scratch when it first came to console. I think it was my Xbox 360 or One or whatever one it was. ESO is one of those games that I still come back to every now and then. I usually revisit it once a year or every other year. I just recently jumped back in. I'm checking out some of the updates that I never get around to, some of those chapter updates and DLCs. You know, the game's combat is probably its biggest weak point, but I tell you, the world building, and so many of the systems are a heck of a lot of fun. I still think Cyrodiil is like one of the cool, besides the lag and stuff, which, you know, it'd be great if they fixed it, right? But the experience of this huge open space with this multi-faction PvP, it's really cool. It's a lot of fun. I love sneaking around, going stealth, and like taking people out as they're trying to farm like dungeons within the PvP zone. There's a lot of really cool stuff in ESO. There's a lot that they got right that I think ZeniMax did a great job of, and it's for that reason alone that I'm excited to see whatever they're cooking. The new IP MMO, if that, or also a Mandalorian MMO, whatever it is. I hope we hear more about it soon. It's an exciting prospect, whatever it turns out to be. Once more substantial stuff comes out, like we get what the game even is, what the IP is, a name, anything like that, I'll be sure to make some more follow-up videos. But that's it for this one. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.